Jason! Jason, we're here, man. We are doing this thing.
We're here.
All right. Welcome to those who are watching. Diana, I see that you left a comment, so it's good to see you here, Diana. And for those others who are watching, welcome as well. This is your chance. We are live here. We're going to be talking about the last episode, but really, if you guys just want to ask any question about the podcast, that's what we are here live doing. Jason, for those who do not know, is somebody who is just kind of like a jack of all trades behind the scenes with the podcast and in front of it. So anything that gets posted on social media that you disagree with, it was Jason. Anything that was profound and interesting was also Jason. So, what could you do? Jason just does a lot of those things that I'm not very good at. And so we're thankful for that. So he's joining us, and he always has some really brilliant insights into things. So we're expecting a lot from you today, Jason. All right.
Thanks. Just me, or am I moving like in slow motion?
Yeah, you're like kind of lagged behind, I think. At least with me. At least that's what I perceive. Well, we're going to get to the end of this live stream, and Jason's going to be like, and my first point is... Oh, man. All right. So we did the episode on the Bible commentary, which really does not advance our story forward very far. Right? It's just kind of like this episode that covers, I don't know how you put it. It's not like it took us from the beginning of a year to the end of the year. It's just something that happened. I mean, it took several years for the Bible commentary to be produced, but it doesn't kind of advance our understanding of the wider church. But sometimes we just do these episodes, I think, because they're fun. Because everybody, I think, who has been an Adventist for any length of time knows the Bible commentary, has seen it, maybe doesn't really read it, but has seen it. And I think it's kind of interesting to tell a story about how this collection of books, these volumes, came to be so ubiquitous. And so that's what we're here to talk about. Jason, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought the episode was 125% more fun than I thought it was going to be, based on the title.
Yeah.
Bible commentary doesn't sound like in the episode where you have pranks and where you have like hidden messages within the book.
Yeah.
So,
why does everybody say that about the podcast, though, man?
Like personal.
Everybody's like, this thing is more interesting than I thought it was going to be. Like, I know Adventist History Podcast, I know Bible commentary are not the most, like, click-friendly titles in the world, but everybody, it seems, has these expectations that, like, this is going to be boring.
Well, this is why we're here to announce the new title of the podcast, Adventist History Extreme Adventure.
Bring your kids.
Yeah. I'm definitely lagging, so that's fun.
That's fine. Just go ahead, man. What were you going to say?
I think it added like this personal touch to the history, but also to the Bible commentary. I don't think a lot of people, at least I didn't have any comprehension of like the personalities behind the book or the compilation of books, and even starting off talking about like the I Love Books. Is that the title of his book?
Yeah.
I want to write a sequel. I Love Books too. See if it will sell as well in 2022.
Oh, that would work. It's such a an Adventist thing. I should have got some pictures of I Love Books, and showed some pages of it. But it's remarkable. If you would have asked me whether that book would have gone as far as it did, there's no way I ever would have bet on it.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the other thing that kind of behind the scenes that I really enjoyed was how they dealt with different perspectives.
Uh-huh.
There were kind of traditional Adventist perspectives, but that they didn't agree with. I thought it was a really actually surprising approach to not just like cut them out, like they had the power to do that. They could have like shaped their entire own narrative, but they created space for multiple perspectives, but still put in that little like expression, Seventh-day Adventists have taught.
Yeah.
But we,
I thought that was remarkable. I think sometimes it just reminded me that we paint with such a broad brush sometimes. And you think, oh, this thing is quote unquote liberal or conservative or whatever, but I think if you're in church leadership and you're any sort of decent kind of leader, you don't even have to be a great leader, just a decent leader. You recognize that you are leading a diverse group of people. And you kind of have to say, my opinion about that is this, but I recognize some people may disagree with this, and that disagreement is okay because I want to lead them too. I want them to, be seen as like legitimate Adventists or legitimate Christians as well. And that's just always such a difficult tension. We tend to just kind of like paint with all these broad brushes of like, well, these people are this way and these people are this way, as if everybody is motivated by this really, really kind of simple movie-like agenda. Like everybody's a simple character. You know what I mean? Like the bad guy in the movie who's just always bad. We don't know why he's bad. He's just bad. He's just a bad person, irredeemable. So we can, the heroes can do whatever they need to do to stop him. It's just like, but people aren't that way, except Washburn. I'm just kidding. But people aren't really that way. Like they're not like pure bad or pure good. They're not purely motivated by theology. They're not purely motivated by whatever kind of ideological commitments they have on the spectrum of Adventist thought. People are complex, especially people in leadership. And anyways, this whole episode just kind of reminded me of that. It's like, yeah, they definitely had desires to steer people. They had an agenda, right? That's what we would say today. They had an agenda, but they also tried to resist that agenda in some ways in the interest of preserving Adventism as a big tent. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think also, going off what you said, part of it's a different approach to promoting an agenda because, like you said, we kind of have a super negative conception of what the word agenda means. But this was a really interesting example of having an agenda, but that agenda, by their own definition, created space for other perspectives, and so you can still like move forward in trying to they really wanted to emphasize the context really matters and that you can't just proof text your way through theology, and so that was, at least from what I understand, one of their main agendas, and yet they didn't exclude other opinions from that. And that's, to me, that's really interesting approach to try to push an idea forward, especially one people might be resistant to, in a way that also invites people along for the ride.
Yeah. It's just, do you think this is a lost art? Like, do you think that, we're in a more polarized climate right now, both within churches and in the political sense in America. Do you think leaders are still trying to do the best they can to lead inclusively, or do you think this is just kind of like a naive wish? You know what I mean? Like, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I think sometimes. I mean, it's the easy cop-out answer. I don't see it a lot, but I do see it once in a while.
Yeah.
And you see it less on social media, but even there, sometimes you can see it. It's hard to have nuanced conversations and nuanced leadership there. And part of that, I think, is the leadership, and part of it is just everybody else tipping the scale of a comment one way or the other.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I was kind of curious about is, this their goal was like to kind of get rid of the proof texting method, right? And I can sit here so many years later and be like, I don't think it worked. But I also don't know maybe how bad it was before. Maybe it was worse.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious if there's anything that you know, or anything in the coming episodes on how this really did impact theology or not, or evangelism especially.
I don't know. Did I mention Nahum 1:9, like affliction will not rise up a second time in this episode as an example of proof texting? I can't remember. I think I did. Well, anyways, the reason why I bring that up is because just yesterday I was talking to a pastor who brought up Nahum 1:9, and I was like, I think I remember talking about that as proof texting. But okay. So yeah, when you say I don't think it has succeeded gloriously, I think that's probably true. But the question is like, are we better off now in that regard than we were in the 40s, 30s, into the 50s? Probably, yeah. I still think, just personal opinion, I still think Adventist hermeneutics are a mess in some respects, because it started off with this kind of plain common sense, the Scottish influence. It's just like any reasonable person should just be able to read the Bible and come to, as long as they're spirit filled, as long as they're praying for insight, they should be able to come to the right conclusion. And you don't need all these advanced degrees and stuff like that, which is true. I think Adventists still feel that way, but there's definitely more appreciation for the fact that, maybe some of us do need to know Greek and Hebrew, and some of us do need to take the more scientific approach to studying the Bible to get at the truth. Like, I think there's a little bit less faith in common sense, at least among certain aspects of certain circles of Adventism. Like, maybe there's been this kind of cleavage in Adventism where you still have people who are like, absolutely, common sense is enough, and then you have people who say, yeah, common sense is good for the important stuff, but also, we should really kind of professionalize in the way that we study the Bible. So, I think that maybe we can say then that proof texting still exists in one of those camps. But as the way Adventists approach the Bible has largely mirrored the way the rest of Christianity has approached the Bible, then proof texting is not like part of the whole. It's kind of like part of a part that now exists. I don't know. Someday I would love to do like a history of Adventist theology rather than just a history of the church, and just kind of find out where all these ideas came from and where they, how they developed and changed over time. But that's for another podcast, another time. Sometimes I'm really thankful that we're not studying theology in this podcast, because I don't really want to get into that mess. And then sometimes I find an issue, it's like, man, I wish we were studying theology. Oh, what can you do? All right. Well, anyways, I think proof texting is going to be with us until the end of time within Christian circles, I guess. I think it's diminished. That's the short answer to the question.
Fair enough.
Oh, man.
So I guess...
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I just out of something, but you go ahead.
Another idea after you do this podcast and then the Adventist History of Theology podcast, can there be like a whole podcast just on like Adventist pranks? That would be really cool.
Well, the thing is like, I'm sure that they had fun, right? Like, we know of a few times where Ellen White did something humorous, but they didn't make a point of writing these things down. And Cottrell writing it down in the 80s, 30 years after it happened, is just glorious. I just wish more people would write it down. I think it'd be a very short podcast. I don't know. I'm not aware of a lot of different pranks. They were just a very serious people. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that part of it. It
yeah,
felt like something from college that we would have done.
Yeah, I mean, but did you think of the commitment, man, to drive down to Florida in the 50s? Like, you know what I mean? This isn't like you're gonna get in your car and go like 80 down there or something. I mean, this is with your nice air conditioning and I don't know, your car play, so you can listen to your music on your screen on your phone in your car. Like, this is old school road trip. Like, how cool would it be to be in that car and to hear what they talked about? I don't think they were playing like the alphabet game going down the highway. I feel like they were like, I don't know, maybe they were having some really cool conversation that I wish I could be a part of. Yeah, I know that sounds like such a fun thing to do, and Cottrell doesn't give us really any details of like what exactly they wanted from Nickel. So, like, why did you make that trip? I know you had some questions for him. Obviously you could have called the motel when it's like that that trope about Indiana Jones in the first Indiana Jones movie where it's like Indiana Jones could have been deleted from this movie and everything would have happened the way that it happened. Like, he made no impact on the plot whatsoever. Like, the Nazis still got the Ark and they still opened it and they still suffered from opening it. Like, he did not stop that in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that's entirely true, but but it's kind of like if these guys wouldn't have gone on the road trip, like how what would have changed? Because if they just would have waited in Tacoma Park, the postcard would have arrived. They would have seen what hotel it came from. They would have called the front desk down there, found out what room they're in, because who cares about privacy in the 50s, right? and then they would have called his room, or had the front desk go get him or something. Like, and they could have asked the question. Now, they didn't know the postcard was coming, to be sure. So, I mean, that's, I guess, in their favor. But I'm just wondering, like, what was accomplished as a result of this road trip that helped the Bible commentary? Nothing, it seems. Nothing.
They wanted that picture, though, right?
They wanted the picture. Like, but where is it? But where is it? I
think one of my favorite parts of the story, though, is Nichols, like, being upset, like, what if you both would have got a crash and died?
Yeah, right.
The commentary would have been gone forever, like a ruin.
I know.
That's what he's upset about.
I know. Oh, man. I know. And you can just imagine, it's like, we're all like, ha, 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 ha. I definitely am glad I don't work for him. That would be horrible. But, it just, to me, it's a great story that illustrates the comradeship of these people who work together. Like, they obviously enjoyed working together. Now, maybe that's also like 30 years later, and like, like the feeling of all that pressure has since gone away. I don't know, but it's really just it's heartwarming to see how well that these people got along together, and I think that that's still true in the church. In sometimes people think like they just walk around the general conference halls like levitating as they pray. These people, many of them, like, they like each other, they get along, they enjoy working with each other, but you can't always show that because people have expectations of their leaders, like that they're just like praying all day long, and they don't smile and they just get stuff done for them. But anyways, oh man. Yeah, it was an absolutely wonderful, wonderful story. Woo! Hey, where'd I go? Get me back here. Wow, that's pretty cool. I'm a little bit bigger than you now. I'm gonna bring myself back. All right.
We're having a little bit of technical challenges today, but my video, I think, has caught up. So.
Yeah, you have. You're in good shape now. All right.
Time travel at its best.
That's right. Oh man. Anyways, yeah, I really enjoyed that part of it. I enjoyed including that little part about Julia Newford going to the Catholic University of America. Has no bearing on this story, whatever. It's like 3 sentences long in the podcast. But, so yeah, if someone's going to accuse me of having a little bit of a, twisting the knife or something a little bit to make a point, that would definitely be it, because it's not a detail that matters a whole lot. But it does make the point that it's like the relationship between Adventists and Roman Catholics is always complicated. It's never this one thing, and maybe that's a whole nother episode we could talk about. But there's a level on the evangelistic side where Adventists can be a little bit antagonistic, and there's a level on the kind of like a leadership side where there's cooperation and respect, I suppose, more respect. And so I think I just included it for that reason, to say, hey, here's just a little tidbit that, sometimes they learn from each other, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, our relationship with Catholicism. And I know this is not always the case, but I did hospital chaplaincy right after college, and just like 7 or 8 chaplains from all different denominations and faith perspectives, and we do our work, but we'd also get into these theological debates. And I just remember this moment where we were debating things, and there was one other Adventist there, and he and I and the Catholic priest in training were suddenly all on the same side, arguing the same aspect of a debate against all the other chaplains. And it was this really weird moment, is this really happening? I thought I was supposed to be on the opposite side.
Yeah.
I think even just going back to the commentary, this perspective of creating space for other views, and also realizing that we're not necessarily as polarized as we think we are. That doesn't mean that we all are the same or anything like that, but there can be a space for not starting off fighting, but starting off hey, let's see what we can all share together.
Yeah, but I think that brings up the whole theological climate of the church, and you realize that we have a responsibility as members, that if we stoke the fires of zealotry, we're not going to get something like the Bible commentary out of our leaders. That's just it made it seem like such a simple point, but I think it's so profound. It's if we want good leadership, we need to be good members. People, because there's so many situations where a leader would be like, well, why didn't you take this road? And the leader will say, because these people would have crucified me for this, right? They're rightly or wrongly, whether that's true or not at that given time, there's the perception that is true, right? So you have Daniels in 1919, right? Well, why are we burying the minutes of this conference? Because if they got out, people will destroy me with it. Now, I personally don't think Daniels was doing anything wrong per se, but he was just aware of the politics of the church at that age, where he knew that some of his comments would be misinterpreted, they would be used against him, that they would be seen in the worst possible light and all these sort of things. And it's we could have had those minutes, we could have had that conversation about the nature of inspiration of Ellen White's writings, verbal or thought inspiration. We could have had that conversation back then when we needed it, but apparently, let's assume Daniels was correct in his assessment of the climate at that time, but apparently the church was not ready to hear it. And so we go decades down this road, and somebody else is going to have to clean up that mess. Somebody else is going to have to deal with this stuff. And you still have Adventists today who think Ellen White was verbally inspired, every single word. It's not as common as it was back then. But you still have it. Why? Because we had a moment where leaders felt that it was unsafe for them to lead in this regard. and it very well may have been, and that's unfortunate. So it kind of goes both ways, right? Like, leaders have to earn trust, leaders have to lead well, and they have to, be very careful. But it's not just leadership is not entirely up to leaders. Leadership is also up to members to help contribute to a climate where leaders can do their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just such a hard thing. Like, could we produce a commentary like this today? I don't know. I don't know. It'd be really, really, really hard. I mean, we're doing one right now, obviously, but it's hard. It's a hard project to work on, where you just don't have somebody jumping down saying, "Oh, Jason's working on this new commentary. Jason gave a sermon 15 years ago where he said this, or he wrote these weird poems. So therefore, Jason's that weird influence is going to be all over this thing. We can't read it. It's horrible. It's like no one's read a word yet, right? But you've prejudged it because of some tweet. We got a comment here from Diana. I'm just going to put it over you because it's easier to read. When we create a safe space for people to express their views, we then start to establish a common memory and mutual understanding of the past and shared experiences. Establishing common ground builds trust. Yeah, and that's absolutely true. So, I suppose we could say that one of the things we're learning is how important it is for church members to be reasonable people. And it's not that there's never a time to get worked up about something, right? I mean, there's a time for zeal, I think. There's a time for action, but that's probably not like most of the time. Maybe after like 1888 or whatever.
Not as often as we think.
Not as often as we think, right? So, anyways, I think that the climate of openness that Cottrell talks about that began with the 1952 Bible Conference is just such a singular thing in Adventist history. Have we had, he calls it a 15-year climate of openness and freedom to study the Bible. I don't know exactly where he gets that from, because we're about to talk about questions on doctrine. and I feel like to a certain degree that openness ends, at least on some issues. But I mean, I hear what he's saying. It's not, he's extending it into the like almost a 1970 into that area. We're about to get to Desmond Ford then after that, and then you have like these books. Do you remember the Darcom books, Jason, from seminary or from theology undergrad? The Daniel and Revelation Committee books that were published.
Yeah,
there.
I think so.
I have some over there, but I can't get up and get them. In response to Desmond Ford, it's like, what do we have? We have the Bible commentary, which is these 7 original volumes in response to in this theologically open climate, and then you have the multiple Darcom books written in a theological controversy. So you can produce things in a moment of theological controversy, but those books, and granted they have a different purpose, those books are not as widespread as the Bible commentary, I think, because they were designed to meet a specific thing, and when that thing is over, they don't enjoy widespread readership like the Bible commentary does. So, I think if you want a widespread, popular book that will endure for decades, I would say it'd have to come from a place of theological openness when the church is in a safe place. That's what I'm learning from this.
Yeah. This may be a biased question, but I wonder, even in a climate of more controversial times, do you think there's hope that things like this podcast, other historians sharing about the context of different theological and historical experiences and perspectives can level the ground a little bit, for lack of a better word? Like, drawing on the past can help bring people into like a common theological and historical understanding?
You know, possibly. I think you could definitely remind us. I think the polarization happens because our view of reality becomes narrowed tremendously, and I think what we can do when we talk about history is to like try to widen that view back out again. It's so. I mean, when we're in this polarized situation, it's kind of like you're in threat mode. Like when you think that you might be in danger, like let's say you're camping, and you think there might be a bear out there or something. Like, what do your senses do? They go from like this to like this. I heard a noise over there. What's going on over there? Like, you are like fine-tuned to any movement, any sound, any whatever in that direction, and you're no longer like having this wide view. That's obviously like a very helpful ability when you're in that mode, but you can't stay in that mode forever. And it actually becomes counterproductive after a certain point, because if you're just constantly looking in this direction, you're unaware. Your blind spot is like the rest of the way around you, and if something comes from that direction, you may not be as ready for it. So, I think that kind of being mindful of history in polarizing moments, hopefully, it's not that we want to take people's eyes off whatever threats may be out there, but just kind of to help kind of broaden people up and say, hey, look around again. And it's only when you look around that you're appreciating where you are and all of these sort of things. You got to get out of that threat assessment mode. You can't stay in there forever. And, hopefully remembering that there's different ways to do things, and the church has done different things. We've handled things differently than we're handling things now. Can hopefully give us tools to either to back down if we need to back down, and just chill out a little bit, which we need sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective.
So, the question is whether I think, I don't know. I think it can also remind us of dangers and help us to. It can go both ways, right? You can kind of say. And this is how people use Adventist history. They say, well, Kellogg did this, he was the alpha. We're looking for the omega, the final thing. And so sometimes Adventist history can be used to heighten people's threat perception and to kind of get them in that mode. It can go both ways. But at the end of the day, what studying history does is it gives us options. It makes us aware of options that we have. So, it's not like you have to do it this way like they did it in the 1950s. You have the option to go into, learning from Kellogg and kind of getting all zealous about stopping potential threats. But, yeah, you could go either way. But the point is, when people are in a polarized situation, it's good to remind them that they have options. So I think that's the use of Adventist history, and especially this episode in the Bible commentary for people. Any final word?
Well, speaking of history and Adventism, I was wondering if you wanted to share anything about upcoming projects from Adventist History Podcast.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit in our bonus episode in January. That our kind of our updated vision is that every Adventist has a working knowledge of Adventist history, and that we're going to do that specifically in this podcast through new media forms. And of course, there's always been books on Adventist history. Every generation has their books on Adventist history, but we're going to try to do that in ways that are different. There will be books as well, but we have our podcast. We're going to have an online course coming up later toward the end of this year. We're going to have a little I still don't know what to call it, the not devotional reflections from people in Adventist history on the Advent season. That's going to come out towards December. And anyways, just some other fun stuff that'll be coming. Like, there's things we're looking into, like, do we want to do, I was thinking that maybe we might do like a comic book where some kids go back to the Millerite movement and basically just kind of is like a 20-page tour through the Millerite movement, right? And then maybe if that takes off, we can do more comic books that keep going through Adventist history in different periods and stuff like that. I think that'd be fun. Like the ideas are plentiful. The time and help and funds to do all those things are not so plentiful. But anyways, Diana, before we go, Diana has a Adventist History Podcast topic question. So go ahead, Diana, hit us with that question. And while we're waiting, we'll say this. I got these things. Hold on, I'm going to go off just for a second here. What? Okay, we got our pins in, by the way, which are really gnarly. I dig these pins. They came across they came out really well. As you can see, they're nice and shiny. They're not in focus also. Yay for this camera and its wonderful autofocus. So anyways, yes, this thing right here, and it's like, but I like your face. I'm programmed to follow eyes, not pins, and it's true. But anyway, so these pins are one of our Patreon rewards for our patrons, and so those will be going out soon. I'm actually just kind of waiting until we get everything in. I've got the 1919 books over there. I got the pins, got our mailers. We're waiting on the tote bags, and we're waiting on one other thing, and then we'll be sending all those out to our patrons. So if you want to get in on that, you're not too late, and get some of these cool rewards for being a patron. Go to patreon.com/Adventist History Podcast. Okay, we got our question from Diana. She's ready. Here we go. All right, Allison, I think this is as an Indigenous person who is new to Adventist history in the Adventist community, I was wondering what the relationship between Adventism and the Indigenous community is. That is a really good question. Maybe we'll do a little blog post about that or something. It's kind of like, what's the relationship between Adventists and indigenous peoples in Alaska? It's going to take a little bit of looking into to kind of figure out what exactly that connection is. I do know of some efforts that Adventists have made and relationships have been formed, but I couldn't quite do that history justice off the top of my head. So I'll be happy to look that up. That sounds like a fun topic to understand, and then maybe we can do a blog post or something about that. Yeah, great question, Diana. Great question. So, anyways, I think that'll do it for this live stream. We've been at it for a good 50 minutes now. We thank you guys so much for joining us. This is exciting. We'll do more of these in the future. We want to get to a point definitely where we can bring you guys on screen with us. We're just kind of perfecting our own setups right now. It's not quite where we want it to be, and once we kind of get this all sorted out, then we'll be very happy to maybe bring you guys in as well. You guys can just jump on and we can just chat about the episode, ask whatever questions you want in Adventist history. I don't promise to have the answer to everything. As I have said ad nauseum, by the time we're done with this podcast, I'll finally be qualified to start studying Adventist history. That's the way I feel about it, because I'm learning a lot of this stuff for the first time too. I'm no expert. So, Jason, thank you so much for joining me today. This was fun. It was good to see you again.
You.
And thank you for your hard work behind the scenes and in front of the scenes and the Adventist History Podcast. We got some cool stuff coming out this year, guys, and I just want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for tuning in today. And just stay tuned, because this is going to be a great year, Lord willing. It's going to be a great year. Can't wait to publish some things and to do more than just the audio podcast. That's still not going to go away, but we're going to do even more. Now, one word before we do go. I'm a pastor, for those of you guys who don't know. I am going on sabbatical in 2 days. So I'm excited about that. I will be off for 6 weeks from pastoring while I write a book, and during that time I'm not going to do any bonus episodes. We will do our normal episodes. We will talk about questions and doctrine end of February, but it just takes that much more time to do bonus episodes, and I want to make the most out of this sabbatical time. So I'm going to write a book and hopefully build my kids a bed. That's the goal, is to build a bunk bed during this time as well. So anyways, that's how I'll be spending that. So there won't be a bonus episode in February, and maybe or maybe not in March. We'll see how that goes. It might be a later one. But anyways, I'm just keeping you guys informed of what's going on. Okay, Jason, again, thank you. And thanks, guys, for watching. We'll see you guys in the next episode.